F1 has upgraded from 10 teams to 11 in 2026, the first time in a decade thanks to Cadillac. And that got me thinking, how did the F1 teams we know and love start out? How did they navigate the piranha club that is Formula 1? Well, in this video we'll talk about how the current F1 teams began their journey in the sport, the make or break moments that define their place on the grid, and what their key goals are heading into 2026 and beyond. If you're new to the sport and don't know who to support, you'll know by the end of this video. And if you're a long-time F1 fan with hundreds of races under your belt like me, then hopefully you'll learn something. I know I did, doing all my research. But F1 fan or not, I'm sure you'll agree, there's no greater dynasty than this one. Enzo Ferrari once said, "Ask a child to draw a car and certainly he will draw it red."
Everybody's a Ferrari fan. Even if they're not, they are a Ferrari fan.
And the reason is they probably have the coolest origin story in motorsport history, or probably sporting history, to be honest. The team predates Formula 1. Enzo set up Scuderia Ferrari in 1929 as a racing outfit years before the sport existed. Then Ferrari began building cars under its own name after the war, and by 1950, they were there at the start of the official F1 World Championship. So early, in fact, that they're the only team to have competed in every season since the championship began. So when people say Ferrari is Formula 1, this is why. But early in the sport, so many Ferrari drivers died that their owner was considered a murderer. At least, according to the Vatican. I mean, in just 10 years, 6 Ferrari drivers died, and the Vatican dropped the coldest line on Enzo, saying that Ferrari is like the Roman god Saturn devouring his own children. Bars. But to be fair, Ferrari didn't need the Vatican to make a fool of themselves.
It's terrible. Drives like a pig.
You can't say that.
It's a Ferrari.
It honestly feels like they're trying not to win at times. It was only a few years ago they managed to fumble signing the greatest car designer of all time. But this didn't stop the team amassing a cult following. I will ask any Italian and they will tell you that Ferrari is the national sports team of Italy. The swarms of Tifosi under the Monza podium are proof of it. After Leclerc won in Monza, birth rates rose in Italy 9 months later. Is that a coincidence? You tell me. But why are they so iconic? I mean, being big in Italy and killing drivers doesn't make you popular. Well, to be fair, Ferrari is standing on business.
You're not getting it. It's not clocking to you. It's not clocking to you that I'm standing on business.
They are the most successful team in F1 with 16 Constructors' Championships and 15 Drivers' Championships as of 2026. This year is our year. And that brings us up to today. Right now, they're at a crossroads. They have the best driver pairing on the grid right now. Lewis Hamilton, statistically the GOAT, and Charles Leclerc, F1's golden boy, are in a race to become the next Ferrari champion, something that will immortalize their legacy. That's how much aura this team has. 2026 is going to be a pivotal season. Can Hamilton cement himself as the undisputed greatest with an 8th championship? Or will Leclerc do to Hamilton what Alonso did to Schumacher? It would be the perfect underdog story. And speaking of underdogs, we have to talk about Haas. Haas are Morocco.
Greatest country in the world.
They used to be the youngest team of the lot, founded in 2016 by NASCAR Giga Chad Gene Haas, and they had an incredible start. Everything looked great for the first couple of years. They looked like a new Force India, a giant killer proving that a bigger budget doesn't mean more success. Oh, that was until Romain Grosjean remembered he was trash.
I think Ericsson hit us.
And Kevin Magnussen forgot his pedigree. And the two played bumper cars with each other for 3 years. At the time, they were run by a guy called Günther Steiner. If you haven't heard of him, he was a super experienced motorsport team principal, and he's now a Hollywood movie star. But unfortunately, the best performance of his career was on screen, because the cars got worse every year he ran the team, until they were literally last in the standings in 2023. And his right-hand man stabbed him in the back. Ayo Komatsu took over. At the same time, Toyota started sponsoring the team. For context, Toyota casually dropped $5 billion into their team in the early 2000s, so this is a major investment and sponsorship for Haas. And they're looking to make their way up the grid. But they've consistently been the smallest team in F1, operating on budgets that were a third of titans like Mercedes and Ferrari. But currently, they're valued at around $1.5 billion thanks to Liberty Media turning F1 into a franchise model for teams. But you know when people say that when you solve one problem, another one reveals itself? Well, Haas might not have as many doors to replace now Günther Steiner's gone, but they do have a bigger issue. See, although the cost cap has now massively leveled the playing field each year, the main problem limiting Haas from being a front runner is their factory, or something that the next team doesn't have problems with. Aston Martin is basically the F1 equivalent of its silver spoon driver Lance Stroll. Anything the team wanted, it got. Adrian Newey, the best engineers in the world from Mercedes, Red Bull and Honda, a new wind tunnel, a new factory next to Silverstone. But best of all, they got the greatest rookie driver to grace the sport of Formula One, Fernando Alonso. Now, you're probably wondering why they aren't dominating the sport with everything they have at their disposal. Well, as crazy as it sounds, Aston Martin spent most of its life as a cash-strapped team from its inception. They used to be called Jordan, founded by the late great Irishman Eddie Jordan, a ruthless and passionate team principal who was known for swapping drivers more often than Ferrari could kill theirs. He had 30 different drivers race for them in just 14 years, and it's kind of crazy. And when he wasn't doing that, you could find him playing the spoons. Jordan sold in 2005 and the team eventually found itself in the hands of Indian businessman Vijay Mallya, and they became the giant killers Force India. They were known for consistently being the team that would capitalize on the front runners making mistakes, which stayed a key strength of the team and is how Sergio Perez literally went from last to first at the 2020 Scuderia Grand Prix when Mercedes fumbled the easiest one to finish of their life. But as much as they kept their rivals honest on track, they weren't so good at being honest off track. The team owner had a few skeletons in his closet. He was investigated for fraud and had to sell the team. And this is where Lance Stroll started throwing a temper tantrum, and his dad immediately pounced at the opportunity to buy Force India for around $118 million. And after a short transition period where Force India was called Racing Point, turned it into Aston Martin, a team that is now worth $3.2 billion, which is crazy to me because they are the most mid team I've ever seen since Daddy Stroll took over. This might be a recession indicator. For me, 2026 is the make or break year for the team. How much longer can they go before the results have to come? Oh, this is the first real opportunity for Aston and Honda.
Something in the transmission that's gone crunch.
To prove that they can win together in the sport. But with the rumours of how Lawrence micromanages the team and is a bit of a tyrant, I have my doubts. But Aston isn't the only team making a massive gamble with their power unit. See, Red Bull had one mission when it joined Formula One in 2005. Make the most noise on and off track. And they did just that. Ten out of 10, no notes. Even to this day, the team has one clear goal: to win the Drivers' Championship with as much style as possible. But that didn't stop them from winning the Constructors' Championship as well. The team actually had humble beginnings, starting out as Jackie Stewart's attempt to foster the next generation of F1 drivers. But when that didn't work, they sold out to Jaguar, owned by Ford. More on them in a bit. But Jaguar was, how do I put it politely? Well, it was a lot of effort for not a lot of shiny things. Using 2004 conversion rates, Jaguar Ford actually spent close to $1 billion for 2 podiums. That's when Red Bull's founder Didi Mateschitz decided to take a punt in the pinnacle of motorsport. He bought Jaguar, placed a washed racing driver called Christian Horner in charge, and got to work. In my opinion, Horner's best career decision was signing David Coulthard.
DC ran wide out of La Source, and the next instant there was mayhem as Coulthard ran up on the exit curb and spun back into the middle of the pack, triggering a multi-car shunt and eliminating several cars on the spot.
Not for DC's talent, obviously, but who he brought with him. I read DC's book and he went into detail about how it went down moving from McLaren to Red Bull. I mean, credit where credit's due. He managed to convince Adrian Newey, the legendary F1 designer, the most successful technical director in F1 history, to move to this rebellious, unproven new team called Red Bull. Not even $100 million from Ferrari could sway Newey at that time. And there was knock-on effects. With Adrian on board, Horner had a much easier time hiring talent and getting sponsors, which meant more time to do this. He won a few championships as well, to be fair. 4 back-to-back doubles with Vettel and then Verstappen will make a man feel like he's a king in F1. And all that recent success brought back Ford as an engine partner from 2026 as well. That's a big gamble when you have proven engine suppliers like Honda and Mercedes in the sport. But of course, pride comes before a fall, right? And Horner ended up in a misconduct case with a female co-worker, and that ended his career short. But at least he didn't hire any racists. Oh. never mind. Speaking of scandals, Renault was involved in one of the biggest cheating scandals in F1 history. But we need to roll back the clock to 1981, where we find their origins as Tolman. They were a humble team, but not irrelevant. They gave Senna his first F1 drive in 1984, and he almost won the race in Monaco, going from P13 to P2. But like many of the teams back then, funding was an issue for Tolman, and they ended up selling to Benetton in 1985. Benetton had a pretty good run. They got lucky with the 1994 regulation changes, and after a close but tragic battle with Williams, Schumacher won the first of his 7 titles. But this was where the cheating began for the team. That year they broke a number of regulations, and Michael first showed his dirty tactics in F1. About a decade and a half later, Alonso was in a Renault battling McLaren in Singapore when the team decided to do something which shocked the sport to its core.
Fernando Alonso coming through to take the checkered flag and claim a very, very well-deserved victory.
The team was almost banned from the sport entirely and was part of a much wider debate in the era around the blatant cheating going on in the sport. I go into more detail in my video here, but after all those allegations, Renault faded into a mid-pack runner. Nothing special for a long time. Midfield irrelevancy, the worst kind of purgatory for a sports team. The team got sold and rebranded to Lotus, completely separate from the iconic Lotus from the 70s and 80s F1 team. They just had the naming rights, essentially. But that was a complete disaster, and they almost went bankrupt because they hired Kimi Räikkönen. Renault brought the team back in 2016 and rebranded to Alpine in 2021. But to be honest, the only thing that's changed in this team was the paint they put on the car. Was it yellow? Was it black? Was it pink? Was it blue? Well, it didn't matter because they were nowhere. The problem is their engine has sucked for a long time, and they just did something insane about it. Now, for context, being a works team in F1 gives you a golden status. You are part of a much more exclusive club because you don't just build a chassis, you also build and supply engines for paying F1 teams, and therefore have more influence over future regulation changes in the sport. But Alpine's Renault engine was so bad, they decided to give up all of that and just buy the Mercedes engine instead. Possibly the dumbest move I've ever seen in the sport, and I watched Nikita Mazepin's first race. But speaking of drivers you all seem to hate for no reason though, we need to talk about Team Papaya, aka McLaren. They're one of only 5 teams on the grid that are considered a historic team. That means they get extra money just for showing up, but this is the second most successful team of all time. And that was thanks to a man called Ron Dennis, who built the team to its heyday, which was in the early 80s through to early noughties. They had F1 icons drive for them: Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, Niki Lauda, James Hunt, Emerson Fittipaldi, Mika Hakkinen, Lewis Hamilton. I could go on. But after Ron Dennis was forced out of the team in 2016, everything started to go backwards. The new Honda Size Zero engine didn't work, the drivers weren't good enough, and money problems forced them to sell part of the team just to stay afloat. It was all going wrong, but there was light at the end of the tunnel.
Orlando, this is Zach from McLaren. Is this the World Champion Hotline?
Restructuring the team worked, and they were developing a young karting star called Lando Norris. You guys spew hate at this guy, but at the end of the day, he's just another kid chasing his dream. And he's quick. The McLaren ship finally stabilized its course around the time that Zach Brown joined the team as CEO, and after a very rough start to the 2022 season, they clawed their way back to win the Constructors' Championship in 2024 and 25, and Lando won the title against tough competition from Piastri and Verstappen, overcoming a 34-point deficit to Oscar in just a quarter of a season. But from a historic team at the top of F1 with deep roots in the sport, we need to talk about the 2 new teams emerging in 2026. First, let's talk about Audi. Now, if you watched F1 before 2026, then you'll know that they used to be Sauber, with a couple of brief periods where they were essentially white labeled to other car brands. The most recent of those was Alfa Romeo, but before that they had a stint that for many was just a year too short. They had Robert Kubica, aka Giga Kubica. But unfortunately, BMW ended up pulling out of the sport in 2009 because of wishy-washy reasons. Ultimately, it came down to money. But Audi has invested about $2 billion into the team over the past few years, and they're aiming to take the 4 rings to the top for the first time in F1 history. And this all sounds nice in practice, but they actually have a really big job to do. Audi's team is now split across 2 countries, trying to make an Audi engine and chassis. And just like Haas, they need to invest in infrastructure, and they need to do it quickly. Luckily, they have something that Alpine just gave up. As a works manufacturer, they now have a seat at the real table and will have a big say in F1's future rule cycles, so they can lobby for the engine and chassis rules that suit them. And remember, Audi is owned by the wider VW group, and that kind of influence is not insignificant. But they have another titan in the automotive industry that they need to face: General Motors. They've chosen to badge the team as Cadillac, their high-performance car brand. But ultimately, it's the American car giant that is running and controlling the team. There's not much to say on them for obvious reasons. Their first year in F1 was 2026, and they're a brand new outfit. So relatively speaking, the team is just a baby. And their YouTube videos, which are amazing, by the way, I really love this deep dive and deep access that we're getting. But those videos show just how much is still coming online at the same time that they're trying to develop and build their first F1 car. That's obviously an insane task. The only indicator of their potential performance that I can see before this season starts is their WEC program. That car is pretty sick. I mean, it sounds incredible. But we'll have to wait and see for the real results in F1. I don't expect anything from 2026 as it stands. But one team I do expect big things from is Mercedes. Now, this team dominated the 2014 rule cycle up until 2021, which we won't talk about. The team itself has a really interesting history and heritage. Mercedes had a team in 1954 and 1955, but that was not technically the same team as the one they own today. This current team started off as Tyrrell, officially founded in 1970, then ended up selling to BAR in the late 90s before they became the Honda Works team in 2006. But Honda execs pulled out in the wrong year. They left in 2008 and the team was bought by Ross Brawn for just £1. And guess what he did? Well, he built a rocket ship that won the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship in their debut season. Mercedes bought the team in 2010 and pretty much never looked back. The most notable thing about this team was that a Monaco-based YouTuber beat 2 7-time world champions in equal machinery. Other than that, nothing super interesting. There's something about 8 back-to-back constructors titles, the most of any F1 team. But as it stands, with Lewis at Ferrari now, the team is sort of in no man's land. It still feels like a British team, even though it's German, and it's still incredibly popular. But in order to be relevant, they need Antonelli to be the next Lewis, the next Max, for everything to have paid off. They made a huge bet on Kimi, bringing him into the team as a rookie, because usually the Works team will have a junior team where their younger drivers can get exposed to the speeds and technicality of Formula One with less of the spotlight and pressure. And the main one is Red Bull's not a junior team. They've had a number of names over the years that you might have heard of: Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, V-Carb Racing Bulls, Cash App Racing Bulls. I'm just going to call them RB. But the team started out as Minardi in 1979. Their most obvious contribution to the sport was Mark Webber, who liked to make cars do backflips. But other than that, the team racked up 0 wins and 0 podiums. So not much to say there. After that, Mateschitz bought them as a second team after Red Bull in 2005. He did that in part because F1 asked him to, and the team was in Faenza in Italy for a long time until they recently expanded onto the Milton Keynes Red Bull campus in the UK, which should surely be a conflict of interest. But to give the team their flowers, the team has fostered some brilliant racing drivers over the years for Red Bull. Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen. But the team will never be a championship contender. That's Red Bull's job. They can't officially admit that they are a junior team, but they are solely there to act as a talent funnel for the main Red Bull team. And that has knock-on effects. Because there's no real pressure to be anything beyond mid-level, the team gets bored. And they love nothing more than changing liveries, team names, and of course, drivers. They've had 19 drivers since Toro Rosso began in 2006, and 6 drivers in just the last 5 years. I don't expect much to come from them going into 2026 and beyond. Maybe a race win if something goes wrong for half the grid. But I do expect more from our final team, Williams. And just like Ferrari and McLaren, Williams are synonymous with F1. Frank Williams was part of the era where there was a revolving door of British F1 teams. Enzo Ferrari called them the Garagiste, which basically translates to garage people, as in, you lot aren't a real manufacturer, you're just mechanics in a shed. It was supposed to be an insult. But Frank rode the waves of debt and flirted with bankruptcy more times than Logan Sargent could put his Williams in the wall, all in an effort to keep his team afloat. And it worked. The team had a lot of success. They won championships with Nigel Mansell, Alain Prost, Nelson Piquet, Damon Hill, and so on. They pioneered technology like anti-lock brakes, traction control, active suspension, CVTs. But after the death of Senna in 1994, it was pretty much all downhill from there. In 2020, the Williams family sold the team to Dorilton Capital, and James Vowles, chief strategy man at Mercedes, took the wheel. The team has been slowly improving, but 2026 looks like it's going to be a rough start for them. So I'm hoping Vowles is given the time he needs to execute his plans. And for the sake of Carlos Sainz's career, I hope they don't remain backmarkers forever. Now, I mentioned a lot in this video. I do appreciate that. There is so much rich history within F1, the politics, the humble beginnings, the innovation in performance and safety, and of course, iconic drivers. If you're interested, I think you'd probably like this video I made about the entire history of Formula 1, so give it a watch, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.